The setting is 2000s Japan. Hundreds of people are contorting themselves in front of Osaka Castle in the form of JoJo poses. The infamous Demon Instructor is executing a level 10 airborne pose, and somehow the man that inspired all this eventually joins them. How did two people gather 500 fans before social media was even a thing? How did they manage to turn JoJo posing into an activity that requires legitimate physical discipline? But most important of all, why did the founders stop right after their biggest success story? We are currently in April of 2003. Stone Ocean has just finished realization, marking, at least as far as readers knew, the end of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Fans knew Araki's next title, but it had no release date and had not been formally announced as Part 7 yet. The only JoJo anime in existence is the 13-episode run of Stardust Crusaders OVAs. And in the West, JoJo is practically unheard of, if you exclude the 5 fans that found imported VHS tapes of Part 3 and played the Capcom game. The Western DVD release wasn't even out yet. This was the only piece of JoJo media that received an English localization. But in Japan, the fandom is alive and kicking. The future of the franchise was uncertain, but that didn't stop them from creating the movement this video is dedicated to. But hey, if you love JoJo poses, then you will definitely love today's sponsor, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Golden Spirit, the first JoJo mobile RPG releasing globally. That means you, yes, you, in your Western country can finally experience a JoJo mobile game. Golden Spirit brings together iconic characters from parts 1 through 6, meaning you can build the most powerful or completely unhinged cross-generation JoJo team imaginable. The fan service is limitless, and to count down to launch, they've released 3 new music PVs scored by the legendary Yugo Kanno, the composer behind Part 3 and onwards. The previews showcase everything from cinematic character animations and recreated iconic moments to real-time battles featuring signature stand powers, poses, and abilities from across the anime. Golden Spirit launches worldwide on August 13, with pre-registration open now on both iOS and Android. The community is currently pushing through the final milestone rewards, with SR Joseph Joestar waiting at the ultimate milestone. Hit the link at the top of the description or pinned comment, pre-register, and help unlock those rewards before launch. And with that out of the way, we're back to the video. Mind you, there is no such thing as YouTube yet, and definitely no TikTok for sharing your little dances or your JoJo poses for that matter. Yet none of that stops our 2 absolute mad lads, Kajipon and the 190cm JoJo fanatic known only as the Demon Instructor. But to understand how this started, we need to rewind 10 months. The earliest documented class took place among friends on June 25th, 2002. Their reason for creating the school, however, is much clearer. They believed that JoJo poses were impossible to communicate through words alone. They had to be physically demonstrated, and if that demonstration was inaccurate or half-hearted, it would fail to convey what made Araki's artwork so captivating. They wanted to turn posing into another gateway through which new readers could discover JoJo, while publicly showing just how passionate its existing fans were. Kajipon served as the organizer, promoter, and archivist, eventually becoming the public voice of the movement. The Demon Instructor served as its physical teacher and pose technician. This dude was just 5 centimeters shy from the signature 195cm height shared by the first 3 JoJo protagonists. Demon Instructor was obsessed with accuracy. Together, these two would form the first and most important piece of the puzzle. One taught people how to reproduce the poses, the other made sure the world could see them. But before they knew, hundreds of other fans would add pieces of their own, transforming a private class among friends into something far bigger than either man could have ever imagined. This Demon Instructor guy must have been an absolute blast to be around. On Kajipon's blog, there's a whole section dedicated to him just being an absolute meme lord. From replicating wacky covers in the goofiest of ways, to LARPing as Vanilla Ice at Lake Biwa like a madman. So the academy itself was structured around 10 difficulty levels. They would slowly help students progress through the levels and contort their bodies and faces in ways that replicated the manga. These guys actually developed their own dedicated warm-up and stretch exercises for their group posing sessions. They would give them instructions for wrists, fingers, hips, knees, shoulders, gaze, lips, and facial expression. Students could reproduce the general silhouette of a pose and still have their attempt judged as wrong. The instructor was strict about details, as an actual Demon Instructor would be, of course. The post-school curriculum gradually moved students from simple-looking beginner poses to increasingly complex and physically ridiculous contortions. The harder the poses became, the more endurance they required, and they weren't only teaching people people how to pose. Before one session, they spent nearly an hour using a whiteboard to explain stand and hamon to around 70 spectators. This was a JoJo class in practically every sense of the word. Kind of like those absurdly detailed Lord explain whiteboard videos. God, I love those. Once the actual posing began, students were expected to hold each pose for an entire minute. That may not sound particularly difficult until you're balancing on crossed legs, twisting multiple joints, and desperately trying to maintain the correct facial expression. Now we finally arrive in April 2003. JoJo Posing School goes public online. 2 small outdoor sessions follow in May and June, before a much larger Shibuya event is announced with only 4 days notice. A whopping 68 JoJo posers attended, including photographers and spectators. Nearly 200 fans gathered in Shibuya. Kajipon's page didn't spread entirely on its own. It gained wider attention after JoJo's Bizarre News, one of the fandom's major news sites at the time, featured the posing school. He later credited it as the first site to bring the project to a wider audience. Before the posing began, the group held a little safety ritual prayer in front of Hachiko, whom they jokingly treated as our goat, Iggy. They offered him coffee, gum, and prayed that nobody would break a bone attempting the poses. Meanwhile, a small Avdol figure faced the police box as their little good luck charm, ready to melt them out of jail if anything went wrong, serving as their little mascot for the event. The most memorable part of the Shibuya crossing event was the finale. Everyone runs into the middle of the crossing and activated, the group freezes until time resumes, like those corny freeze fads American college settings have in movies and shows. But this time, it was actually pretty damn cool. Another highlight from the event was a literal group stand rush LARP, and when I say LARP, I mean it in the traditional sense, not the new gen slur way. The organizers even got permission from the police to do all of this publicly beforehand. Proper dedication from Kajipon and the Demon Instructor. If nearly 200 fans could gather on just 4 days notice, imagine what happened 4 months later at the Osaka Castle gathering. The event took place on October 12, 2003. The event was scheduled to begin at 10 in the morning, but some fans who had traveled by overnight bus were already there before 7. People had come from across Japan, from Fukushima in the north to Fukuoka in the south, with multiple fans even making the journey from Shikoku. By the time Kajipon and the Demon Instructor arrived at 9, a crowd had already formed around the fountain. At its peak, around 200 people were actively participating in the poses, while another 300 spectators and photographers were gathered around them. 500 JoJo fans in total, brought together by a posing school that had only gone public 6 months earlier. The event began with another group prayer for everyone's safety, just like it did in Shibuya, followed by the Academy's original body and facial stretches. This is where the Demon Instructor gave them one essential rule. JoJo posing is 70% pose, 30% face. Before approaching Osaka Castle, everyone rehearsed levels 1, 2, 3, 8, and 10. The area surrounding the castle was packed with tourists, and the organizers refused to let their first impression of the JoJo Posing School be a bunch of schmucks practicing it badly. The group moved towards the castle only after everyone had sharpened their posing technique, and this is where the event stopped resembling a normal class and started turning into a live-action stand battle. This time, they didn't have to look towards Hachiko to reference Iggy, because Iggy was there in the flesh. Fans also brought Harvest and Highway Star to life, with Harvest collecting coins and vouchers around the crowd. For one exercise, the Demon Instructor made the crowd pose as an entire fleet of aerosmiths. He assigned each participant a number, and somehow the roll call continued all the way to aircraft number 170. The entire fleet then charged towards a tiny toy spider from roughly 200 meters away, firing one enormous group before sending it flying with but even that was surpassed by their recreation of Wamu feeding on 200 German soldiers. Their participants formed a gigantic line stretching back towards the station. As Wamu's attack traveled through them, each person collapsed in sequence, creating a human wave of 200 people having their life energy just sucked out. When the group finally reached Osaka Castle, the people at the top activated the world, while the fans below formed a giant heart around the number 7. It was a message to Araki. were waiting for part 7. Even an elderly tourist and his granddaughters ended up joining the formation, presumably without having any idea what kind of ritual they had just wandered into. From there, parts of the group carried on the madness onto the GR loop line and into Umeda wearing stone masks. The pictures of everyone waiting at the station are easily some of my favorites, giving major 2000s con vibes, especially the ones of the instructor with a world cutout. When they arrived at Umeda, they performed a final time stop and a stand rush LARP similar to the one in Shibuya, only this one had way more people. Before moving on to the final challenge, the group made one last stop inside the immortal Osaka, gathering around a statue they had adopted as Jolene. They thanked her for the event's safe and smooth operation, then surrounded her and performed the famous Ari Ari Ari! to signal her goodbye. About 140 lunatics were still gathered before they attempted the final challenge to recreate over 100 stands in only 90 minutes. The public program lasted 7.5 hours without a lunch or bathroom break, and as if that wasn't enough, Kajipon, the Demon Instructor, had spent 17 hours on the previous day recreating stands until 3 in the morning. Another standout was the recreation of the G in Guts chapter cover from the 56th volume. Absolutely unreal. They even tried recreating Sea Moon's gravity ability, and to top it all off, a massive group Emerald Splash facing a clock in the park, a message towards Araki. But that success had created a bit of an issue for our lads. This was no longer a private class or a manageable fan gathering. It was a movement involving hundreds of people, and it was still being run by 2 dudes and a handful of their friends. After Osaka, they stopped organizing gatherings on this scale. There was no scandal, police shutdown, or complaint from Shueisha ever documented. Kajipon later explained, "So many people were gathered that the 2 of us could no longer handle an emergency if one were to occur. As a result, we stopped organizing our own events." But stopping their own events didn't stop the fans from carrying the movement forward. And that is exactly what happened. Just 7 weeks after Osaka, 3 fans who had met at the event organized their own reunion in Kobe. Kajipon attended, but this time he specifically described himself as just another participant. He wasn't running the class anymore. He was watching the students run it themselves, and they had clearly done their homework. Kajipon recalls somebody calling out level 1, only for the entire group to immediately snap into position without the Demon Instructor showing them what to do. They still needed a few tiny corrections, but the basic knowledge was already there. Another great example were the JoJo Olympics, a sports festival created by fan group Passione Tokyo in 2006. Across 9 events, fans completed an Dio-themed card game, Aerosmith paper plane throwing, 4 consecutive posing jumps, and a brutal level 8 endurance contest. By the third tournament in 2007, around 100 participants had gathered at Tokyo Metropolitan Gymnasium. The founders had stepped back, but the fans were now running events on their own. The movement continued spreading. On July 31st, 2004, 104 JoJo fans gathered in Sendai, the city that inspired Morio. The person behind the event, a fan named Mokyu, was only 15 years old. The Sendai gathering carried over many of the school's traditions, the opening safety prayer, the 10 posing levels, and even Radio JoJo Calisthenics, a full JoJo-themed parody of Japan's traditional morning exercise routine played from a boombox. But the fans also made it their own, filling the program with Part 4 references performed around the real-life locations associated with Morio. And unlike the 7.5-hour Osaka endurance test, the organizers actually handed out drinks so nobody collapsed in the summer heat. More groups soon followed. Fans who met through the movement formed groups like Passione Kinki and Passione Tokyo, organizing everything from posing sessions and flower viewing parties at full-blown JoJo sporting events. Giorno would so approve of the flowers, and Kajipon himself never stopped posing either. He simply exchanged crowds of hundreds for increasingly ridiculous solo missions around the world. Even before Osaka, he carried a stone mask made by the Demon Instructor all the way to the Aztec ruins of Teotihuacan. Then in November 2003, he spent 4 days traveling across Italy to recreate scenes from Golden Wind at their real-world locations. He brought 72 pages of manga references, a stand arrow entrusted to him by the Demon Instructor, and a bag he used as a makeshift tripod. This man had become a JoJo referencing nomad. Whenever police officers, employees, or random bystanders questioned what he was doing, he would show them the original manga panels. Some of them understood the assignment so well that they began correcting his hand angles. The Demon Instructor's spirit had apparently possessed random Italian civilians. Kajipon even returned to the Colosseum to reshoot one recreation after realizing that he had forgotten to fasten his arm with a zipper, because according to him, reproducing a scene half-heartedly would be disrespectful to the original work. In June 2004, he took the same idea to Florida, recreating Stone Ocean around Miami, Orlando, and Cape Canaveral. Highlights included his weather report and sea moon recreations, followed by a double rainbow appearing just before his flight left Miami. An accidental reference to weather. Kajipon framed it as a goodbye to weather in his travel vlog. So the movement never really ended at Osaka. It simply stopped belonging to the two people who created it. While fans were carrying JoJo posing into cities, the movement itself was beginning to attract attention outside those original internet communities. Bandai used it for a game commercial for the Phantom Blood PS2 game and even hired the posing school for it. It also appeared in R25 magazine and even made its way into a Japanese dictionary of contemporary terminology. And then, in September of 2006, Kajipon and the Demon Instructor received the ultimate invitation to celebrate the 25th anniversary of Hirohiko Araki's career. A private party was being held in an Italian restaurant in Tokyo. Kajipon, the Demon Instructor, and their assistant DOR were invited specifically to introduce JoJo posing in front of Araki, his wife, in a room filled with manga creators and people from the industry. Definitely not nerve-wracking. And these dudes prepare for this like they were about to fight the Pillarmen. For the entire month before the party, they tried to eliminate anything that might prevent them from attending. They avoided unnecessary trips, stopped crossing roads once the light turned yellow, and refused to eat anything with a questionable expiration date. The Demon Instructor even temporarily stopped practicing Chinese martial arts because they were terrified that he might break something. Every night, they checked in with each other through email to make sure they were all still alive and healthy. Kajipon took the microphone and explained their idea. JoJo poses combined power and elegance, two qualities that should seemingly contradict each other into a single form of beauty. The Demon Instructor handled the physical demonstration, while Kajipon guided the audience through the routine. They then performed Radio JoJo Calisthenics, their 3-minute JoJo-themed parody of Japan's traditional morning exercise routine, directly in front of the man whose artwork had inspired the entire thing. And Araki didn't just sit there and watch, he joined them. He performed the Dio pose, wore a stone mask alongside the Demon Instructor, enjoyed the Wamu sequence, while the routine itself went all the way to level 10. After years spending correcting every wrist, finger, heel, and facial expression in the name of respecting Araki's artwork, they were now guiding Araki himself through it. Did I mention how nerve-wracking this must have been? Yeah, I did. And his reaction perfectly validated what they had been trying to accomplish. Araki told them that he had enjoyed looking through the JoJo posing webpages, but the detail that stood out to him was how happy everyone looked. 4 years earlier, when they were still posing amongst friends, the two had apparently talked about how wonderful it would be if they could thank Araki in person just once. A dream a lot of people watching this probably also share. Now, they had not only thanked him, they had convinced him to put on a stone mask and perform JoJo poses alongside them. I see this as an absolute win. But this wasn't the final form of the JoJo Posing School. That arrived on November 2nd, 2007 at Tohoku University in Sendai. The event was part of a 2-hour lecture celebrating JoJo's 20th anniversary. In early October, Shueisha contacted Kajipon and told him that Araki was interested in collaborating with the posing school during the lecture. They were also told to keep the entire thing a secret so it could be revealed as a surprise on the day of the lecture. Before they could teach JoJo posing together, they had to make sure the school's technique was actually approved by the man who drew the poses. The night before the lecture, Kajipon printed out the school's posing guides and examined them with Araki and the Demon Instructor. They spent 4 hours analyzing the exact height of each limb, the angles of the body, and of course, the position of every finger. Araki personally corrected several details and even drew over the printed guides to demonstrate how the poses were supposed to work. He also explained why those tiny details mattered. The backwards curve of the fingers wasn't just there to look strange. Araki saw the flexibility as a symbol of youth and life, because people gradually lose it as their joints become stiffer with age. He also praised the Demon Instructor's technique, explaining that the angles of his shoulders, hips, knees, and ankles formed a harmonious diagonal line across his entire body. The next day, they arrived at Tohoku University to find the venue completely full, with around 400 people waiting inside. Araki began with a 70-minute lecture about how he created manga, followed by the surprise everyone had been waiting for, JoJo Posing School with Hirohiko Araki. Araki wasn't simply joining a warm-up at a private party, he was helping them explain why JoJo posing worked as an art form. According to Araki, JoJo had always attempted to combine reality and fantasy, two things that normally resist each other like water and oil. His characters were drawn with recognizably human bodies, but their joints were twisted beyond anything people would ordinarily do in real life. He compared this to CGI, which normally tries to make fantasy appear more realistic. JoJo Posing did the complete opposite. It forced reality itself to move closer to fantasy. With Araki providing commentary, the Demon Instructor demonstrated 20 poses while Kajipon guided the lecture. They worked through the original 10 difficulty levels and another 10 newer poses taken from scenes throughout the series, and Araki immediately began correcting their curriculum. He argued that level 3 deserved to be ranked much higher because its wrist and finger angles were practically impossible. During level 5, Araki played Dio while the Demon Instructor became Jonathan. When they reached Narancha's level 8 pose, Araki casually explained that Narancha wasn't sitting in midair, he was falling from a building in Venice while posing on the way down. So apparently this cover has a canon backstory now. At level 10, Araki explained that the most important feature was the twisting of the body. The wrists, torso, and hips all formed a spiral because, in his words, life itself is a spiral. The second half brought in more character poses, including Giorno, Dio, Kakyoin, and Killer Queen. When Kajipon joked that Killer Queen's arm looked broken, Araki explained that Killer Queen was a cat. So of course it was flexible. Pretty reasonable if I say so myself. The final challenge was the infamous with the Demon Instructor jumping into a full airborne split in front of the original manga panel. After all 20 poses had been completed, Araki looked at what they had created and declared that they had entered the world of fantasy. So what was the JoJo Posing School really?